The asphalt didn't explode so much as bubble. 1 second, the HOA board was lined up in lawn chairs on Sycamore Lane, smugly watching the required drainage remediation I'd been forced to pay for. The next second, the contractor's pump hit something in my old backyard bog and the world turned into a fart-scented apocalypse. A geyser of pale, rotten egg gas shot straight out of the storm drain, right under the HOA president's folding throne, as the street heaved, cracked, and sagged. The air went greenish. People screamed. Someone yelled, "Is this a terrorist attack?" Hazmat trucks arrived. The fire chief screamed at everyone to evacuate. The news helicopter circled overhead. Cops sealed off the entrance to our subdivision. And right there in the chaos, the county environmental inspector pointed at HOA President Mara Jennings and said, "In front of God and Channel 8 News, this is what happens when you bully residents into messing with a stabilized wetland you were legally supposed to leave alone." Marla's folding chair sank an inch as the street caved under her. She clutched her HOA clipboard like a life raft and realized, too late, the toxic cloud wasn't the most dangerous thing in the neighborhood anymore. My name is Daniel Pike. I'm a quiet guy. Environmental engineer. My hobbies include reading, fixing small engines, and not talking to my neighbors. I bought my house in Sycamore Glen Meadows because it backed up to a small bog, one of those scrubby, cattail-choked pieces of land developers call unbuildable and brochure copy calls natural habitat space. I loved it. Frogs, dragonflies, weird birds at dawn. The ground stayed soggy year-round, but my house was built on higher fill, so it was never a problem. Well, until the HOA for the dramatically overinvested got involved. Enter HOA President Mara Jennings. Marla was in her late 40s, blonde ponytail pulled so tight it looked structurally load-bearing, and wore a whistle on a lanyard like she was coaching a soccer team made entirely of violations. She had a clipboard in one hand, a measuring wheel in the other, and the unshakable belief that everything, even wetlands apparently, could be brought into compliance. For 2 years, we coexisted. I paid dues. She left me mostly alone, other than the occasional email about how my naturalized backyard vegetation may exceed acceptable aesthetic parameters. I ignored those. Then the bog started bothering her. It started with the mosquitoes. Actually, it started with her new boyfriend, Carl, an overtanned real estate investor who kept calling my bog untapped potential and wasted square footage. They bought the lot 2 houses down from me. Marla suddenly started spending a lot of time in my cul-de-sac, eyeing the bog like it was personally insulting her property values. At a board meeting I didn't attend, but got fully documented via nosy neighbor group chat, Marla announced a new initiative. Sycamore Glen Meadows will become a standing water-free community. She then sent out a newsletter with the subject line, "Kill the bogs, save the values." Within a week, I had a bright orange notice of violation taped to my front door. Unsanitary stagnant water condition, Lot 27. Your rear lot lowland has been deemed a nuisance, mosquito harborage, and potential liability. Corrective action required, drain standing water and regrade to HOA standards. I read it twice. Then a third time, just to make sure she was actually telling me to drain a state-registered wetland that existed before the subdivision did. I emailed her. "Hi Marla, that's a mapped wetland. The developer's own documents classify it as protected open space. Altering it without permits is illegal. Sincerely, Daniel." She replied, 5 minutes later. "Daniel, the HOA determined your wetland is actually just neglected property. Failure to remediate within 30 days will result in daily fines. Warmly, Mara Jennings, HOA President." Warmly. I sent her a PDF of the county environmental map. She responded with a screenshot of page 47 of the CC&RS where it said no standing water features shall be maintained without HOA approval. And that's when I realized she wasn't just wrong. She was determined to be wrong in writing. The violation letters escalated. Threats of liens. Health hazard language. She started saying the whole board, the management company, probably her hairdresser. She even showed up in my backyard one afternoon with Carl and a measuring tape. "You're violating community health standards, Daniel," she said, pointing at the cattails. "We're prepared to hire a contractor and bill you." "It's a wetland," I said, again. "You can't just pump it out like a kiddie pool." Carl smirked. Buddy, I've dried up dozens of these. You don't know what you're talking about. Except I did. Because this, swamps, drainage, soil profiles, was literally my job. I tried one more time. Marla, messing with this bog could release trapped gases, disturb contaminants, destabilize the soil under those backlot foundations. I waved toward the row of McMansions behind us, including hers. You start pumping, you don't know what's coming up. She folded her arms. Then I suggest you comply before we force you to. So I documented everything. And I waited. 30 days later, Marla made good on her threat. I woke up to the sound of heavy equipment. A diesel pump truck, 2 flatbeds, and a crew in high-visibility vests were parked along the back of my property. The contractor's logo said Quick Drain Solutions in a font that did not inspire confidence. I walked out back. Marla was there in her HOA shirt, arms crossed. Carl was pacing, already on his phone, talking about future development opportunities once this mess is cleaned up. This is trespassing, I said. Marla smiled like a shark. The HOA has an easement for maintenance of drainage and nuisance abatement. You refused to comply. We're mitigating. The foreman looked miserable. We've got a work order signed by the HOA, Mr. Pike. I looked him in the eye. Did anyone tell you this is a designated wetland? That the underlying peat has been stable for decades? That there are methane pockets down there? He blinked. No. We were told it was yard drainage. I pulled out my phone, hit record. Okay. For the record, I'm informing you that altering this wetland without a permit is illegal, and that rapid dewatering could release trapped gas and destabilize the soil under those houses. I panned the camera to Marla. I formally object to this work proceeding. Marla rolled her eyes. He Googled something. Now he thinks he's an expert. I have a master's degree in environmental engineering, I said. This is literally my field. She waved at the foreman. Start the pumps. The hoses went in. The machinery roared to life. Water, thick and tea-brown, began pouring out of my bog into the storm drain system that ran under Sycamore Lane. I called the county environmental office. Miraculously, someone picked up. I explained, emailed photos, forwarded maps, attached the HOA's violation notice, and the video of Marla ordering the pump crew on. There was a long silence on the line. Mr. Pike, the inspector finally said, we'll be there as soon as we can. In the meantime, try to stay upwind. You know how land looks firm, until you realize it's basically a wet sponge on top of a gas pocket? Yeah. The pump had been running for about 45 minutes when I noticed the cattails sagging, like someone had let the air out of them. The water level dropped fast, exposing black, stinking muck beneath. A rainbow sheen spread across the surface. See? Marla shouted over the engine noise. Look at all that sludge. Disgusting. It's a hazard. I did see. That rainbow sheen? That meant hydrocarbons. Old buried junk. Maybe an ancient fuel leak. The exact kind of thing that's safe-ish when left submerged and undisturbed, and very much not safe when you start sucking water off it like a milkshake. The air took on a sharper, eggy smell. The crew started coughing. The foreman looked nervous. Maybe we should slow the pump? Marla snapped. We're paying by the hour. Keep going. Up on Sycamore Lane, the HOA board had set up folding chairs to observe remediation. There were snacks. Someone had brought a thermos. They watched, smug faces turned toward my retreating bog and its imminent makeover into amenities. Then the ground hiccuped. You could feel it, a soft whump underfoot, as the saturated peat compressed in gas that had been trapped for God knows how long got a new path, straight into the subdivision's storm drain system. The first manhole cover-up on Sycamore Lane rattled, then burped out a puff of pale, oily mist. Anyone else seeing that? One of the board members said. The second manhole, right in front of Marla's lawn chair, bulged. Then everything went to hell. Every manhole cover on the street jolted up an inch as a wave of gas surged through the pipes. A thick, rotten egg cloud belched out of the gratings, rolling across the asphalt. People screamed and stumbled back, coughing. Shut it down. The foreman yelled, "Kill the pump." Too late. The gas had its escape route. Right then, the county trucks came tearing into the subdivision, 2 white pickups with environmental compliance on the doors, lights flashing. A fire engine followed, sirens wailing. The inspector who hopped out took one breath, choked, and slapped an air monitor on. His face went from annoyed to horrified in about 2 seconds. He turned to the firefighters. "Get the block sealed off. No open flames, no engines. This whole stretch is a hazard." They started evacuating houses. Firefighters banged on doors, yelling for people to get out now. Marla tried to stride up, eyes watering, voice hoarse. "Excuse me. I'm the HOA President. We ordered this." The inspector rounded on her. "You what?" He snarled. "You ordered unpermitted dewatering of a designated wetland and pumped the effluent straight into a municipal storm system under a residential street? Are you insane?" She sputtered. "It was a nuisance. He wouldn't fix it. The CC and RS say." "I don't care what your HOA pamphlet says," he snapped. "You just created a confined space toxic atmosphere under your own neighborhood." He looked at me. "Mr. Pike, is this the person who issued the violation notices and directed the contractor?" I nodded. "Yup. Got it all documented." He smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "Great," he said. "We'll need all of that." Sycamore Lane looked like a disaster movie set. Hazmat tents, fire trucks, cops directing traffic at the subdivision entrance, turning away stunned residents. The local news van rolling up, camera guy already squeezing into a gas mask. The inspector held an impromptu press conference in front of Marla's prize-winning azaleas, which were now gently drooping in a faint chemical fog. Due to unauthorized disturbance of a regulated wetland and improper discharge, he announced, a gas release occurred under this street. We're monitoring levels and ventilating the storm system. No ignition sources are allowed. We have evacuated adjacent homes out of an abundance of caution. A reporter raised a hand. How did this happen? He didn't even try to sugarcoat it. We've received documentation indicating the subdivision's homeowners association pressured a resident to remediate an area they incorrectly identified as a nuisance, he said. They ignored warnings, bypassed permit requirements, and hired an unqualified contractor to pump the site. He turned, pointed directly at Marla, who was now sitting on the curb, makeup streaked, clutching her clipboard like a teddy bear. The HOA leadership's decisions led to this event, he said. There will be fines. Significant ones. And potentially civil or criminal consequences. The camera swung to Marla. She tried to rally. I was only enforcing standards. She wailed. He refused to maintain his property. The CC and RS give us authority. I'm the president. The inspector regarded her the way you'd look at a raccoon eating drywall. Ma'am, he said, you cannot override state environmental law with your newsletter. He turned to me. Mr. Pike, you said you warned them? I pulled out my folder, the one with printed emails, violation notices, screenshots, and the video of me telling the contractor not to start. I warned them, I said. Multiple times. As an environmental engineer. The news camera zoomed in on my calm, absolutely done face. That clip would later be used in more than one when HOAs go wrong segment. Within hours, the county had issued a cease and desist order on any further remediation activities. They also slapped Sycamore Glen Meadows HOA with a notice of violation listing fines with more digits than the HOA's annual landscaping budget. Insurance reps showed up looking like they'd bitten lemons. Marla tried to hide in her house. Unfortunately for her, the gas had chosen Sycamore Lane as its favorite vent path, and her house was ground zero. They evacuated her again. This time, with a deputy standing nearby, holding a clipboard thicker than hers. The long-term fallout was glorious. The HOA's insurance carrier, when presented with the environmental violation, the state fines, and the footage of Marla ordering the pump turned on, did some math and promptly dropped them like a hot rock. Without insurance, the HOA couldn't function. No coverage, no legitimacy. The county forced them into receivership with a professional management firm whose first act was, all enforcement activity is suspended until further notice, And under no circumstances may the HOA attempt to regulate wetlands, drainage, or anything that smells like science. The fines. Those weren't cheap. The State Environmental Agency levied penalties for illegal wetland alteration, improper discharge, and creating a public nuisance hazard. Then the city added costs for emergency response, hazmat deployment, and storm system ventilation. But here's the part that really salted Marla's over-fertilized lawn. They traced the decision-making back to the individual who ordered the work over documented objections. That would be her. The HOA's bylaws had a neat little clause about indemnifying the board, except where members acted with gross negligence or willful misconduct. The county's report kindly included the phrase grossly negligent disregard for known environmental risks. Translation: the HOA wasn't on the hook personally. Marla was. She lost her presidency by unanimous board vote. They removed her for cause. Her email access was revoked. Her beloved newsletter was reassigned to a retired librarian who thought maybe, just maybe, they should focus on potlucks instead of everyone's garbage canangles. Marla ended up in court, facing a stack of civil claims. The state wanted penalties. The contractor wanted to not be blamed for following her orders. Some residents, whose homes had to be temporarily vacated and inspected, wanted compensation. Her lawyer, looking exhausted, negotiated a brutal settlement. She had to pay a chunk of the fines personally. She was barred from serving on any HOA board in the state for 10 years. She had to sign a consent order admitting fault for initiating unpermitted wetland disturbance. And my personal favorite, she had to attend a 40-hour environmental compliance training class, taught by my firm. I didn't teach her group. I recused myself, professionally. But I did happen to stop by the training center one day to drop off some materials. She was in the front row, hair limp, eyes dead, scribbling notes while my colleague explained, in excruciating detail, why standing water in a mapped bog was not the same as a kiddie pool. She saw me in the doorway. I gave her a little wave. Back in Sycamore Glen, the bog recovered over time. The county required the HOA to restore it, native plants, protective signage, the works, at their expense. They posted a tasteful wooden sign at the edge of my yard. Sycamore Glen Community Wetland. Protected Habitat Area. Do not disturb. Seriously. We mean it. Underneath, in smaller letters, the county had added, per Environmental Order Number 2025-118. Neighbors started coming by in the evenings to listen to the frogs. Kids caught tadpoles. People apologized, quietly, for ever backing Marla's crusade. I forgave most of them. Maybe. On still summer nights, when the air hangs heavy and the frogs chorus, you can still see the faint patchwork in the asphalt where they had to reseal Sycamore Lane after the gas burp. Marla's house went up for sale not long after the settlement. The listing didn't mention the part where her bad decision turned her prized mosquito ditch into a legally protected habitat. The moral? If you're going to pick a fight with a bog, maybe don't do it against the guy who literally designs drainage systems for a living. And if you're an HOA Karen who thinks your clipboard outranks environmental law, well, sometimes the only thing more toxic than your personality is the gas you personally helped unleash onto your own street.